Well, Father Junipero Serra, he was a Spaniard. He was what's called a Franciscan, and that he was also a priest. It's a priest that belongs to what's called a religious order. In an understanding of that 16th century or 18th century world, what had happened was Spain, the crown, was beginning, of course, to extend their explorations through the world. And they believed, because they were ruled by a king of the divine right, that they were to spread as well the message of Jesus Christ. And so when Spain came to any country or the New World, it came in two forms. It came with the presence of the crown, and that was the soldiers and the settlers, and it came with the church, and that would be the missionaries. They came into various sites where there was an openness for the missions and established, as you know, the series of 21. San Gabriel Mission was number 4 in that process. Through Junipero Serra, who was an interesting character in the exploration and or the development of the church. They were to bring the good news. And so that is what he attempted to do. There's a major fact that I learned just a couple years ago that really changed what I thought about Junipero Serra. He submitted a universal Bill of Rights for Native Americans in 1773. And we sit there and take that in. 3 years before the United States of America was born, 3 years before we came up with a Bill of Rights, a Bill of Rights that was restricted to landowning white men. And here is a man that is defending the rights of indigenous, that they have universal rights. The majority of the deaths of Native Americans did not happen when the Spanish came into the mission lands. It happened at the start, in the years right before the United States taking over this territory. It does not discount some of the things that happened through the mission system. And our country is not ready yet to own that it was the beginning of the U.S. and the settlers that came in here that caused the greatest damage to our native peoples. Sainthood is not talking about perfection. And I think that's the mistake that we have in this modern world, that we're claiming someone has this perfect life. It is acknowledging his efforts to bring good news, that everyone belongs in God's family. And this is what I would say to individuals who might critique Junipero Serra. I would like them to go back to any other religion and try to find the defense of natives. But if you follow Bartolomé de las Casas, Junipero Serra, and numbers of others, quietly who worked for the dignity of Native Americans, when the rest of the world, and we can't forget this, was calling them savages. But certainly in the last number of years, there has been a series of attacks on particularly these statues. We have been aware that these statues have been lightning rods for the community. And in 2017, as you mentioned, this statue was attacked. So they threw upon it a paint. It was an oil paint to look like blood on his hands. And someone tried to saw his neck off. But in this past year, with the pandemic, and again, another rise in this violence against the image of Junipero Serra, it was the very beginning of June where we moved the statue from where it was in the public arena so that it will stay on the private grounds. And so it won't be this eyesore for some people or this cause of pain for others. Of late, We are in a period, as you can see, of reconstruction, and I think that describes the mission on every single level. And it describes, too, our relationships with the Tongva and the Native Americans. We are working, as we reopen the mission, to give a dedicated space for them to tell their own story, not for us to tell that story. And so that's a hope that we have with them. If we want to develop any future relationship, we have to acknowledge that we're not in a vacuum at this moment. We have to acknowledge that we have had moments where our message was not sometimes what we proclaim it to be. But I pray that we as the mission continue that authentic piece of open doors and acceptance, a place where they can heal and we can reach them with the love they deserve.